Hello, welcome to Frequencies, tuning in to frequencies of human behavior, perspective, and empathy. I'm Matt, and today we're going to talk about what I call stimulation replacement therapy. It's not really a therapy, it's just a name, but it's really just a technique or strategy that I use during my recovery. And it's exactly what it sounds like, doing things that stimulate you intentionally and strategically. Today I also want to talk about two things I've mentioned many times before, and that's ADHD and recovery. You'll hear me come back to these topics often because they're me. They're where my experiences come from, and they're the lenses I see the world through. Now, this episode isn't entirely about recovery, and it's not entirely about ADHD either. I've said before that I'm not an expert, and it should be pretty obvious I'm not a doctor. I mean, I'm wearing a pretty sweet cardigan here, but this technique, stimulation replacement therapy, truly has the potential to help people repair and rebalance themselves in some surprisingly real ways. I talked a bit about this back in the episode called Formula for Success when I said that humans simply want to contribute. We want to feel purpose. We want another human to look at us and say, wow, thank you. That's great work. Because that's who we are. Creators, makers, thinkers, problem solvers, survivors. Maybe we no longer need to invent new ways to trap animals or build shelters from scratch, but the drive is still there. When we see a problem, think of a solution, build something to fix it, and actually make it happen, our brains light up. That process, that feeling of, I did it, is deeply stimulating. It awakens pride. It awakens joy. That's the heart of stimulation replacement therapy. It's not magic. It's not even complicated. It's just about doing things that engage your brain and feed your curiosity. But when you do those things strategically, when you build stimulation into your day with purpose, something changes. So during the early stages of my recovery, I recognized symptoms of ADHD I'd never fully understood before. My brain didn't just crave distraction, it craved engagement. So instead of simply trying not to drink, I started building moments that gave my brain real joy, that kept it too occupied, too fulfilled, to think about alcohol. Over time, I realized this approach could work for others too. And it's not a formal program. Like I said, it's a mindset, a shift in how you feed your brain the stimulation it's already asking for, just in a healthier, more creative way. Now, maybe at the end of this episode, when we explore the idea zone, I'll say something that sparks a new idea for you. Maybe it'll push you to start a new project or take one step into a better direction, because nobody benefits from a broken, joyless version of you. Not your family, not your friends, not you. So today, let's try to make things a little better and start rebuilding together on this episode of Frequencies. Let's tune in. So, let's talk about stimulation. You probably already know what it means, or at least have an idea of what it is. And I'm going to be honest, for the longest time, the word stimulation made me think of one thing. And it was kind of dirty, and it may do the same for you, but seriously, every time I heard the word stimulation, I thought of boners. Totally thought of boners. It's so childish, I know. But that's where my brain went. I don't know why, just because I think that's how we learned in high school or school about stimulation, and it just always stuck until later in life. And technically, it still does apply to that in that context, but the truth is there's a lot more to stimulation than just that. I also like using metaphors to make sense of ideas or break down cliche sayings we have all heard a million times. And one that is totally relevant to this topic is time flies when you're having fun. When time seems to disappear, it's because your brain is fully absorbed, completely stimulated. You're locked in. You're not checking the clock because your brain is getting exactly what it wants. Engagement. That's stimulation in action. When that happens, our brains release dopamine, that natural feel-good chemical. It gives us a little buzz of satisfaction. That's why stimulation feels so good. It feeds us a real biological high. No substances needed. There are endless ways to stimulate your brain, and everyone's threshold for it is different. Some people only need a little. Others, like me, I need a lot. And if you have ADHD, that craving for stimulation is practically built into your wiring. Reason being, people with ADHD basically live in a constant dopamine deficit. We're not cruising around with a half a tank. We're running on empty most of the time. So our brains go searching for any activity that'll refill that tank, especially things that are new, interesting, or challenging. That's a huge part of why ADHD brains seem impulsive or easily distracted. It's not about a lack of interest. It's about survival. Our brains are scanning for something exciting enough to wake them up. People who need less stimulation, on the other hand, can stay calm longer. They can read quietly or meditate for hours without climbing the walls. There's exceptions, obviously. There's people with ADHD that can read great, and there's people with ADHD that can meditate great. And honestly, I'm super jealous of that. Reading and meditation are two skills I want to be great at, but it's extremely hard. The quiet makes my brain just start generating 100 new thoughts before I can even take a breath. I mean, I'll start listening to meditation guides, and they're telling me to breathe in, breathe out, and I'm trying to keep up with the breathing, and then I start breathing too fast or too slow, and I start analyzing my breathing is probably too fast. He said breathe in, I'm breathing out. Hold on, I need to catch up with him. Constantly overanalyzing the directions, overanalyzing everything. But, there is a flip side to people with ADHD. Some people, and a lot of us with ADHD, have this wild card ability to hyperfocus. When we actually find something stimulating enough, we lock in hard. We can deep dive into a task, streamline it, hit these small wins like dominoes, just boom, boom, boom. Each one giving us another hit of dopamine to keep going. It's like a chain reaction of motivation. We constantly find efficient ways of each step. And then as soon as we, achieve that goal and make it quicker and more efficient, it's more dopamine. And that's before you know it, time's gone. You look down and it's hours have gone by. It's a black hole. This happens for me often. So yeah, we all chase stimulation in one way or another. Some people need more, some less. But everyone's brain loves that natural dopamine high, that feeling of being totally alive in what you're doing. Now, that natural dopamine high we talked about can absolutely be synthesized or imitated, mostly in the form of drugs and alcohol. I know this all too well. For me, it started like it does for a lot of people. Smoking weed in high school, from the outside, it just looked like harmless experimenting. And for many teens and young adults, that's exactly what it is. But when you're an undiagnosed kid who feels out of place and suddenly finds a little peace in your brain, it's not just experimenting anymore. It's self-medicating. It's masking. And when nobody knows any different, it goes completely unnoticed. In my case, it went on for over 20 years, eventually migrating to alcohol. The other normal drug our culture has completely embraced. Alcohol is baked into almost every social event with happy hours and holidays and celebrations and casual get-togethers. It's presented as just what adults do. And those that can drink and have control of it and can have actual moderation, it's awesome for you. That's great. I wish I did. I don't. But society has completely normalized it. So when I finally stepped into recovery, I knew one thing for sure. Finding a new way to spend my time was going to be critical. So this was late 2019, right before the pandemic started shutting everything down. And at first I thought the most important thing would be to maintain the relationships I had, the groups I socialized with and loved hanging out with, because they stimulated me. I enjoyed it. For me, that main group was the after work happy hour crew. I tried to keep that life going for a while, but I realized something pretty quickly. Now, if you remember in the Formula for Success episode, I talked about analyzing different businesses in terms of the service they actually provide society. And when I applied that lens to a bar, a place you go get drinks, a bar, it really raised my eyebrows. Just ask yourself, what real service does a bar provide? And I'm not talking about the food. I mean the bar itself. You could argue it provides a place for community and socializing. I guess that's the best you could probably stretch it. But then look at the kind of socializing that usually happens there. A lot of it is complaining, venting about work, rehashing old stories, stuff about yesterday, last week, last month, the past, talking about the past versus actually discussing things about moving forward. Very rarely do groups of people sit around at a bar and map out a solid, efficient business plan. I mean, it happens. But a lot of people, if they say they are, they're probably lying to themselves, because it's just truly not an efficient environment to strategically think and analyze things. There's exceptions, of course, going out and having drinks and karaoke or something like that, which the singing and the karaoke should be the stimulating part, but we'll talk about that later. Back to the story. So I tried to keep my happy hour social life, and it became obvious pretty fast that sober me was not going to find that same fun there as before. So I went back to the drawing board. So it's 2020 now, and companies everywhere are going through major changes. I was too. I took a pay cut. I got demoted. I kind of realized that I was being taken advantage of by my company in a variety of ways, by my boss, by the people that I was managing. It was tough. Money got tight. It was 2020, remember? So that's when I realized I'd probably, or I might have to, sell the house. So I need to maybe prepare for that. And that's when the stimulation replacement therapy really kind of got started. And once again, it wasn't called this. It's just, I knew I needed to do something. And I thought, okay, well, at least I can work on the house. House projects, there's movement, progress, stimulation, right? So first I started decorating and actually furnishing the kids' rooms. I have 2 kids, and their rooms weren't really the greatest. They just had beds and, it was pretty simple stuff, but I decided to kind of give them themes, decorate them. I made my boys' room like a Nerf blaster arsenal. It was pretty badass. Daughter's room, she was into dragons or something. I forgot what exactly I did with hers, but I furnished them. I made them desirable places for them to hang out. And that was a huge emotional payoff. And then I moved to doing some closets, and that was tough. Reorganizing and cleaning the closets. It's a tough one because they're not braggable. There's not something nobody really but you gets to enjoy it. But when you do, and you get place to store your things and get a little bit more organized, it's very stimulating. I promise. You guys may know this more than me, that for me it was like, oh, look at this is amazing. But then I started thinking about the bathrooms, your bathroom and your kitchen. I started kind of investing some time and effort into those, whether, upgrading the lighting and the fixtures, just to kind of make it a little bit more presentable. Each one of these projects really helped. I did the basement too. The basement was a giant task. The basement had like shag carpet and wood paneling, and it was a project. I was pretty much using it as a giant closet. We weren't using it at all. But I got pretty creative with making it a desirable space upgraded flooring and covered the walls and just made it more comfortable. And that was giant sense of relief and satisfaction, because now I've got additional space for me and the kids to play. It took time and it challenged me. Then I got to watch my kids enjoy it all. That was the biggest reward. So meanwhile, I started playing guitar a little bit more. And at first it was pretty frustrating. I'm being early in the recovery game, your irritability levels are through the roof. But I just thought I sounded terrible. It was a giant hump to get over, but I did. Over time, that frustration started to fade, and little bits of progress started showing up. And around 6 to 8 months into my sobriety and a few months into the pandemic, and you remember it's 2020, and everybody was live streaming. The big name artists were even doing it because live shows were shut down. There was nothing happening. I looked at this tiny train room that I'm in, the room I'm in right now. I was thinking to myself, this could be a little studio, man. This room kind of doesn't look like much. Just before the walls were all painted blue with skies on it, and it had high tables in here, and it was a train room. And I knew when I bought the place that it could potentially be used as something else. And when I eventually, around that time, I was like, I swear, I just stood back at the door here for 2 hours, just like looking, staring, like, what can I do? I need to do something in here. Just cleaned it out, put a table in here. I went and got a old computer, and I had a PA that I kind of used as an interface in a way, or just mic'd it. I don't really remember, but just to get audio, I think I got a cheap camera, and that's how it started, And at that time I was posting a little bit on Facebook. I was actually posting a lot of just family photos and just daily stuff, stories about the kids, but never really was posting any music videos. Kind of terrified me, but I wanted to practice. I wanted to see if I could build up the courage to do it. So I started practicing more and more and more in the direction I wanted to be. I'm not going to be able to post if I'm, not comfortable doing it. So I was playing a lot more. And then in the 10th month of my recovery journey, I finally decided to post a cover song. It was me playing just an acoustic guitar, singing on Facebook, just for friends. It wasn't on a public forum of any kind, a public social media site. It was just Facebook, so just to my friends. And it was terrifying. It really was terrifying, but I did. I posted it. I remember I was sweating and shaking, like, what are they going to think? What are they going to think? But I posted it. And, fear is a giant sense of stimulation itself, but then eventually the response was pretty big. It was huge for me. I got a lot of really good feedback. And that was a massive dopamine rush, pure stimulation. So I did it again and again, and I kept practicing more and more. And then when I hit 1 year of sobriety, I posted an original tune, an original song about my struggles with alcohol. It was more about the hereditary line of alcoholism, but I posted it, and my friends received it pretty well. Another giant dopamine hit. It's an original tune putting out there. But then when I did that, something bigger happened. It was people started recognizing me not just as that guy who quit drinking, but as someone in active recovery. And I hadn't really been super loud about it before that point in time. And after that song, a small wave of people started reaching out to me privately, telling me they had a problem. They told me I was inspiring them. That was enormous. That made me feel really, really good. Stimulation through the roof. It really was. That was a big motivator for me. I'm getting stimulated by playing the music, which I love. That's my genuine passion. But I was also getting stimulation from sharing it, getting positive feedback. But I was also getting a giant stimulation rush from actually helping people. major rush. It was really cool. Eventually, I started adding a hashtag at the end of the videos, hashtag my new booze, to those posts in the video to show that playing and sharing music had become my replacement for alcohol. It was my new high. That's stimulation replacement therapy in action. Hashtag my new booze. And that's where it all started. I wasn't calling it stimulation replacement therapy yet, and I wasn't formally sharing it as a program of any kind. Hell, I still haven't. This is the first time really presenting it in any professional form in any way, if this is even professional. But that is the true origin story of the concept. So it wasn't too long after all of this that I started sniffing out what was really going on in my brain. I'd already noticed a few things with this new brain in recovery. That's what I called it around that time. I was actively posting about that. I knew preactively that this is my new brain. And I had suspicions about what I was working with. Then my algorithm started to catch on too, feeding me ADHD and neurodivergent content nonstop in all my social content feeds. And eventually I stumbled across this article about brain stimulation and ADHD. And as I read through it, I kept seeing just things that were resonating big time. I mean, that sounded familiar. That sounded familiar. That sounded familiar. And by the end of that article, I knew I didn't have all the paperwork or labels yet, but internally the light bulb was on. I knew it. It wasn't until 2024 that I went in for an official diagnosis, which that process was a fucking nightmare. Very frustrating for reasons I won't fully get into here, but let's just say that dealing with people in the simulation, like we discussed in the previous episode, folks were just doing their job and nothing more. And it was pretty frustrating, but I ended up getting a provisional ADHD diagnosis and a recommendation to talk to another doctor who specialized more in high-functioning autism. I never followed through, partly because I just hit more of those NPC types in the system, and I just didn't have the energy to keep pushing. People were seriously just doing their jobs, no more. It was really frustrating. But even that provisional diagnosis mattered. It gave me validation. It gave me context that at least some of what I'd been dealing with had a name. It gave me something to search, something to understand instead of just thinking, why am I like this? After that 1 year sobriety post, the original song that I posted about my struggle with alcohol, and the flood of messages from my friends, I really started sharing more videos. That was incredibly helpful for me. I kind of started building up a YouTube channel, not really with the intent of creating a YouTube channel. It was really just created for a hub that I can easily upload videos to and share the links to share with friends. But ultimately, they started getting, lots of views on them, for me at least. So that was incredibly helpful for me, no question. But for others, my friends, it helped, but only up to a point. Watching someone else heal is powerful, but it doesn't automatically give you a roadmap. That's when I started talking a little bit more about things I was doing in my life, sharing my personal time. And I began recommending things that I was doing. I was kind of trying to lead by example in a way. I wasn't really calling it stimulation replacement therapy. I think I may have mentioned a couple times, but it was really just about trying to subliminally teach people to intentionally swap unhealthy things for healthy things, pretty much. But it wasn't really embraced by my friends. Their association with me wasn't a health and life coach. I was just their buddy with a guitar and a weird brain. But I tried, and I still believe this method works for a lot of people and for a lot of different situations. So I do want to share some ideas with you. Real practical things you can do. I know it might sound a little ridiculous because you already know about all of these things. These things exist. Hobbies exist, projects exist, creativity exists. You can go to Michael's right now and just buy something off the shelf. But a lot of people get stuck behind that invisible wall of, I don't know where to even begin, and that's enough to shut the whole thing down. So here in this next little segment, I want to try to help get you over that hump, buddy, old pal, old friend. We're gonna step into the good old idea zone. We're gonna step into the idea zone. Sorry, I don't know why I feel like I have to say that, but I really do. But I want to take you into the idea zone and just kind of recommend some different things that I explored. Some I tried and didn't really resonate with too much, but maybe you will. But kind of give you some tidbits on how to start, maybe where to start, maybe some little tips to get you started. So let's step into the idea zone. Sorry. Let's start with music. Music is an easy one for me. You may not be a music person. Many of you, I know a lot of us enjoy music in some way, shape, or form. So a lot of people don't think they're musically inclined. And sure, some people truly aren't. You may be tone deaf as shit, but you still like to sing in your car. That's fine. But I do think many people are more capable than they give themselves credit for. But I say this, just start cheap. You don't need a $500 guitar. Start with something you already have, your voice. If that sounds terrifying, you're not alone. I get nervous still to this day when I hit record, but everybody can sing. And you don't have to be an incredible singer. If you enjoy it, do it. Sing in your car. That's the best place to do it. Go for a drive with the single intention of singing your heart out. Windows up, windows down, doesn't matter. Just let it rip. Strategically plan to do it. If you're stressed, let's just say, I'm going to go for a ride. Turn on a good tune and just let it rip. If you want to improve, the internet is full of vocal coaches and training videos. If you want to push yourself socially, try karaoke. You can go out on karaoke nights or keep it private with a little home karaoke setup. Either way, it's stimulation. And I met a guy recently. He's a musician, but his parents really weren't, but they're retired. And he said his mom and his dad both have been doing karaoke like crazy, and they love it. I thought it was awesome. I think it's a great way to spend time and have some fun. But you want to take it to the next level, maybe learn an instrument on a budget. You don't have to spend $500 on a guitar. But if you're drawn to an instrument, I think you should totally do it. And piano and keyboard, excellent place to start. Be honest with you. It teaches fundamentals, and there's a ton of beginner content online. Start cheap, of course. A used keyboard, entry-level digital piano. Just don't let the price tag kill you. Seriously. If you're thinking about guitar or bass, do it. Go for it. A few basic lessons could help. Lessons with a teacher, but it's not required. It'll definitely help, though. But there are endless beginner tutorials and courses online that you could take advantage of right now. And here's a little secret. A lot of songs only use 3 or 4 chords. Seriously. And of those 3 or 4 chords, there's really, if you learn like 5-10 different chords, of those 5 or 10 different chords, you'll be able to learn hundreds of songs. So here's my tip. Learn the A chord, the E chord, the C chord, the G chord, and the D chord. Now there is a million different variations of every chord. Don't stress out about that. Look up the basic A chord. Now learn the A minor and the A major chord. There's slightly different variations, but those 2 chords are used often. Same with the E. Learn the E major and E minor chord, the C chord, the G chord, and the D chord. 7 chords. Learn those 7 chords, and you will be able to learn and play along with hundreds, if not thousands of songs. I promise you. Another thing to consider is electric guitar is a little bit easier on the fingers. You do need an amp to make it a little bit louder, which turns into its own fun little rabbit hole with getting more effects pedals and stuff. But it is easier on the fingertips, something to consider. Or you can get an acoustic guitar. It takes a little bit more pressure on the fingertips to push its strings down, but it's loud enough on its own, and it's very satisfying. Like I said, it does take a little bit more effort to push down on the strings Over time, it's going to hurt your fingers a little bit quicker, but you'll develop calluses and you'll be able to play in no time, no amp. Playing acoustic guitar is my personal preference. Or you can learn the bass guitar. Bass is tuned similar to the guitar, 4 strings versus 6. Simple bass playing often just follows the root notes of the guitar chords. And as you improve, you can branch out into techniques and styles. There's a million different ways to play, more complex ways to play, of course. But once you get started, the stimulation of playing along with your favorite songs feeds the drive to get better. Music is fun. I highly recommend it. So next, we're going to catch you a little bit off guard, I bet. How about start a podcast? Seriously, you may be saying to yourself, get the fuck out of here. I'm not. I'm serious. Start a podcast. It's easier than you think, and it's really fun. You may have to get over the hump of hearing your voice recorded back. Every single person I've talked to and met over the years hates hearing their voice played back. Don't worry about it. You don't need a crazy microphone. You don't need a studio. Your phone microphone is plenty good enough to get started, I promise. You just got to find kind of a quiet space and hit record. If you want to upgrade later, there are inexpensive mics that plug right into your phone, have like some noise reducing technology on them that helps eliminate background noise and clean up the audio a little bit. Not very difficult at all. And you may be thinking, like, how do I get on the big platforms? Well, it's easier than you think, I promise. Spotify actually offers the Spotify Creator app, which lets you record and publish directly into Spotify for free. It's kind of, before it was Spotify Creator app, it was an app called Anchor, and that's an app that I used to do my first podcast, which total nightmare. It was a show called The Forensic Fun Files. Just a goofy show about forensic files where I kind of just did spoof stuff. I did music. I did the creative design element of it. I mean, it was a full-on creative just overload. It stimulated me so much. The creative part of writing the dialogue, all that stuff. Extremely fun. Highly recommended. All you got to do is come up with a concept, a simple concept, brainstorm some topics and stories, hit record, talk, publish. You'll be on Spotify. It's a fun one. It's easier than you think. And even if it doesn't get many views, who cares? If you enjoy doing it, do it. I mean, hell, look at my show. Now, a really simple form of stimulation that we all know of, but is probably the most bang for your buck, is movement, nature, physical exercise in nature. Walking, running, hiking, biking, all out in nature. Seriously, you get the physical exercise and you get the visual aid of the world, beauty. I do love hiking, mostly for the visual and sensory stimulation. Being on the trail and soaking up nature, sometimes it really does help me write music. I call it creativity harvesting. Seriously, you take in some of Earth's natural vibes and energy, and you'd be surprised what you kind of take in when you're out there. But when you go hiking or running or whatever, you get up to the top of the hill, you get the physical exercise of climbing the hill, and then you get to the top of the hill and you get this beautiful overlook. Very stimulating. I promise you won't be disappointed. Another project I kind of talked about on the episode here is home projects. Working on your house, for sure. Yeah, they can cost money. And yeah, some jobs are probably best left to professionals, like electrical, plumbing, and structural stuff. But there's a ton of things you can do, like painting bedrooms, basic woodworking or shelves, or reorganizing closets. Push through there. I promise you it's worth it. Updating decor or turning unused areas into functional spaces. It's definitely stimulating. Your home is your biggest investment. For most of us middle class, lower class people, your home is your biggest investment. So spending money on upgrades and upkeep is usually worth it. And that stimulation is layered because you're learning the skill, you're doing the work, then actually living in the improved space. Totally worth it, promise. couple other things that kind of rapid fire some ideas here. How about bird watching? I mentioned I'm a bird guy. That's kind of how this started. I totally got into bird watching, and I'm a bird douche. I love birds. Started with a simple feeder. That's where I would start if I were you. And just kind of put some food out there and watch who shows up. Learn their names, learn the sounds. For me, it evolved into building 3-foot Ferris wheel, 8-car bird feeders and trying to sell them on Etsy. Like totally, it spiraled. It got out of hand. It was really cool though, I promise. Like just building the bird feeders and then watching the birds and the squirrels play on the units that I built. Super fun. But simple bird watching is enjoyable. I promise. It's not for all just old people. It's very stimulating once you start to recognize them and get out into the wild and start seeing them, and you can start recognizing species. It's pretty cool, I promise. Another thing is arrowhead hunting. It's a big one. This is a fun one. It's kind of low key. You may not have even considered it, and you may not have any in your area, but you'd be surprised. There's nothing quite like finding an ancient tool that another human crafted hundreds or thousands of years ago. But you do have to be respectful and legal about where you search. Always get proper permission and follow local rules. But freshly tilled fields after a rain can be primo. Or some city creeks. You'd be surprised how many city creeks get approval. I didn't tell you that. But arrowhead hunting, check it out. Another one, rock collecting. It's in that same realm as if you're arrowhead hunting and you start seeing interesting rocks or minerals or crystals, pick them up. Quartz, agates, and other interesting stones. Beautiful stones out there that you could start collecting. Super simple, extremely fun. Learning the different minerals and the different substrates. Extremely fun. Highly recommend. And if that's not really up your boat and you want to get more tech with it, how about a metal detector? It is fun, I promise you. And metal detectors have gotten more affordable. You can get some decent ones online, rather cheap, that do the job just fine. Expensive ones really do a better job of kind of telling you what metal is, how deep. But basic ones are going to beep when there's metal there. So get one. It's really cool, I promise. But again, like arrowhead hunting, find out your restrictions in the parks and areas that you're searching before you go digging. But it is fun. In that same realm, mushroom hunting. I don't know if that's in the same realm or not, but I'm going to say it is. Super fun. Morels, if you ever gone morel hunting, highly recommend. And it's a big, if you don't know the mystery of the morel, like it's pretty fun learning how to track them and what trees that they tend to grow under and what season. So you find yourself learning tree species, and again, you're out in nature, and these suckers taste like steaks, for real. You got to try them. If you've heard that, it's true. Delicious. Even if you're not a mushroom guy, these are different. Delicious. Learn your mushrooms before you eat them. Don't just go snacking on caps. Be careful out there. Another one, gardening. Gardening is one of the most underrated forms of stimulation. Probably one of the oldest ones if you think about it. It's good for your body, mind, and for the environment. Planting something, tending it, and watching it grow. Definitely a slow burn. I'll say that. Slow burn. But it is satisfying. I tried it. I struggled with it. I do not have a green thumb. I'm terrible at it, but I wish I could, because things at the grocery store ain't getting any cheaper. But how about fishing? Fishing's a fun one. Or magnet fishing. I haven't done magnet fishing. I want to, but that's on my list. Fishing though. Regular fishing is classic. It's really relaxing, but there's a slow challenge to it. You have to learn. And a lot of you maybe avid fishermen. Who knows? I'm not. I've done quite a bit of fishing over the years, but I'm kind of weird about fishing. I don't like touching them at all. I'm a total baby when it comes to fishing and touching them. I've got to put on my gloves and everything. It's terrible, but I enjoy the act of fishing. I like the strategy of learning what baits catch which fish, what technique to use to catch the fish, what time of day, all that stuff. Very fun, very challenging. And food, again, it's ultimate stimulation, but the excitement of catching when you hook it, I got one, super fun. Moving on, you got some crafts, different crafts and fiber arts, knitting, crocheting, sewing, super rhythmic, tactile, and incredibly soothing once you get into the groove. Plus, you get a scarf out of it. I was going to actually, when I was testing kind of how I wanted to shoot the show here, I was potentially going to knit as I talked, just because I tend to ramble on, as you probably have recognized. But when I knit, when I'm kind of focused on something else, it's kind of easier for me to not get lost in the conversation. Didn't work out that well, but I'm a knitter. Love knitting. It's fun. Definitely recommend. Next, you can do some art. Art and painting, drawing, sketching, model car painting, scrapbooking. All of these, you create something from nothing. Very fun. You don't have to be great. You could do abstracts. You could do there's so many. You could do geometric drawings and paintings. Just there's so many different ways to try to capture art. Highly recommend. Big bang for your buck. Hell, put it on your walls or sell it. There's so many different things you could do. Another one, photography. Huge potential here. Start with your phone. Phones take excellent photos nowadays. You learn basic composition. You play with different light and angles, and decide later, if you really want to get a camera, get a real camera. The cameras have gotten a little bit more affordable. They're still pretty pricey. I've got a decent one I just bought as a 40-year-old man. I finally bought one. Been wanting one for years, and very fun. Enjoy it. And it also combines creativity, movement, and attention to detail. I'm like I said, I like to take mine out in nature. I'm out in nature taking photos. Boom, bam, stimulation, go. Moving on, stargazing. Very cool, very chill. Lay on a blanket and look up, man. Let your brain just be blown by how many different things are up in that sky. Telescopes have gotten pretty affordable over the years. They really have. I bought one a couple years ago, and I could see the moon with extreme detail. It's got a little hookup for the phone and everything, just kind of clamps on there. That rig is pretty frustrating. I'll warn you there. If you can find one that has a good review on the phone rig, recommend. Very cool. But stargazing, definitely recommend. And you learn constellations. There's a lot to learn up there. Another one, puzzles. Puzzles are simple, cheap. It's challenging. Every piece that clicks into place is a tiny reward. And then, if nothing else, you can glue them together, put them on the wall. You got art on the wall. There you go. Or get into puzzle clubs. Everything I've mentioned probably has clubs that you can start meeting people on and get together with. But yeah, there's clubs, groups. You can definitely meet some people that are doing the same things. So now you got the social element to all of them. Another one, I've discussed this before, reading. Learning is pure stimulation. It really is. If reading comes easy to you, do it. Read as much as possible. I've mentioned it several times now. I struggle. I've started and abandoned more books than I can count. But I still keep trying, really do. But if you can, excellent way to feed your brain new content, new information, very stimulating. Highly recommend. Now, the point of this isn't to overwhelm you. It's to show you just how many doors there are. You don't need to do all of them. You just need to pick one that feels interesting. Start cheap and let it pull you in. Every little spark of curiosity you follow is one more form of healthy stimulation, one more step into your own version of stimulation replacement therapy. It isn't some complex 12-step system or mystical path to your higher self. It's a mindset. It's the idea of intentionally replacing harmful habits with healthier ones and building new routines that exercise you mentally and often physically too. Is it fun to sit on the couch and watch TV or scroll through thousands of clips of cats and pyramids and boat launch fails? Yeah, Absolutely. It's fun. It's easy. It's familiar, hilarious. But most of the time, we don't walk away from that feeling proud or fulfilled or changed in any meaningful way. Now, I'm not here to tell you to ditch the screens or never scroll again. I scroll. I scroll a lot. I'm actively working on that. I'm actively working on trying to reduce my screen time for sure. But I'm not pretending I'm above it. There's genuinely great content out there, tons, and there's so much you can learn from it, even in short form. Only you can decide what's healthy for your brain. Only you can decide if the amount of scrolling you do is working for you or quietly draining you. Only you can decide if 7 to 20 beers a week is moderation, or if 4 joints a day is too much or just right, man. What I'm saying is this. I like to get something out of my time. I like to stand back after I've done something and say, that was fun. That looks amazing. I'm proud of that. That feeling of having created, built, learned, or moved your body is a different kind of high. It's the kind that sticks with you. Our mental health is getting hammered from all directions right now, especially if you're constantly plugged into the feeds. I honestly believe we are being hit with a form of psychological warfare, just nonstop inputs, outrage, fear, comparison, noise. I mean, it's everywhere. Addiction is hard. We all know that. But depression is right up there with it. And in some ways, it's even harder to see. Addiction often has visible signs. Depression can be quiet, invisible, and tragically easy to miss until it's too late. I've lost a lot of friends to suicide over the last few years, more than I'm even comfortable counting. When you add those losses to friends who've died from overdoses, the number just in my small circle is terrifying. Families shattered, kids growing up without parents, empty seats at holidays, picture frames on the wall where no new photos will never be added. No more wrinkles, no more gray hair, no more birthdays, just a frozen image of someone who should still be there, should still be in here. Maybe you've experienced something like that too. Unbelievably painful. Unexpected deaths of people who were way too young to be buried. It's brutal. And it's exactly why our mental health matters so much. If you have kids, it's even more critical. They need you here. They need you present. Our youth is the most important resource we have. And honestly, with the way the world is heading, they're going to inherit a fucking mess. They're going to need every bit of resilience, creativity, and emotional strength they can get. And they're going to learn a lot of that by watching us. It's up to us as parents, as older siblings, as uncles, aunts, mentors, friends, to maintain our mental well-being enough to show them how to keep going when life gets hard, to model what it looks like to struggle and still move forward. That's where this whole stimulation mindset comes in. Intentionally stimulating our brains in healthy ways helps fill us up. It gives us joy. It gives us pride. It nudges us to learn, to grow, to get stronger. Not just physically, but mentally. It gives us reasons to wake up and say, okay, I've got something to do today. I've got something to work on. So if any of this resonates with you, consider this your gentle nudge. Start something. Anything. Something small. Something cheap. Something that's yours. Give your brain a better kind of fuel. Stay strong, friends. Reach out to someone if you think they're struggling. Reach out to me if you're struggling. You're not a burden for needing help. You're human. If this episode sparked even one idea or gave you one tiny bit of hope, then it did its job. Thanks for listening to Frequencies. If you like what you hear, just do some clicking on the buttons around this damn thing. Any engagement helps. I appreciate it. Later.